AskReddit. Besides their accent, what's one way you know a tourist is American? When visiting Paris, my wife and I learned they don't seat you at restaurants. You just walk in and sit down at an available table. We figured it out after standing around at the entrance a few times. Then we started noticing other American tourists doing the same. While in Korea, I was casually talking to a friend on the bus in regular speaking voice. Not even a minute later, the lady in front of us turns around in her seat and says very casually, "Please calm down." I guess American volume is noticeably louder. Not everyone, but in general, if you are at a restaurant or a bar, you immediately can hear who's American. Saying hi, "How are you?" to the barista, servers, retail workers. My country doesn't quite have that culture, so I find it really sweet. I took a New Zealand friend through a McDonald's drive-thru and the server said, "Hi, my name is, how can I help you?" My friend thought it was so great. She said it was like they were becoming friends. Being called African American while living in the Netherlands. A black mate of mine from London was once haltingly referred to as a British African American by a tourist. Went to Russia once, and they knew, because I smiled too much. Those pearly whites are a one-way ticket to the gulag. "Hey, nice teeth, comrade." "Oh thanks, I." "Shut up, you're under arrest." When I went to Italy with a friend, I couldn't figure out why everyone greeted me in English before I said a word. I don't wear running shoes outside of the gym. I dress pretty posh. I can't remember the last time I owned a baseball cap, and I try to have a basic grasp on the local language. How can they tell I'm American? My friend told me, "It's because you're smiling at them." Today I learned we have monopoly on baseball caps. Seriously. Apparently shorts aren't worn anywhere else either. Shorts, yes. Cargo/khaki shorts, no. They get amazed by old things. Girlfriend used to work on a farm and an estate in the UK, and would often have Americans in awe of the old buildings. One once said, "Some of these buildings are older than my country. That's why we find it interesting, to be honest, and my mom is from England, so we'd visited the UK constantly since I was a kid. I still find the old buildings really interesting." If you see an American in Japan, they will frantically look for public trash cans. The absence of trash receptacle is something unfounded in the US, and we become confused at the idea of having to hold it for extended periods of time. Asking for the restroom. I mean, obviously the accent was then heard too, but in my little village in Scotland I was in the pub and a woman politely asked the barman where the restrooms were. He didn't know WTF she was on about, and then it obviously clicked. "You mean the toilet?" It's juiced back. Yeah, I asked to use the bathroom in Geneva, and they asked why I needed to take a shower. "One toilet please. One toilet please." Tipping. Americans will try to tip everyone, even in countries where tipping isn't a thing/is considered a serious insult. I went to Pennsylvania and tried giving a kid a $9 tip after a museum tour, and he must have thought I was crazy. He was like, "Are you sure you don't want your change back?" I'm half Japanese, and I live in Japan. Basically, we automatically assume any white person is American. They're looking for a store open at like 11 PM. Even if in most European countries stores close at like 7 to 8 PM. This. And Americans will be wearing sneakers. Yep. I walked into a museum in Germany and the women selling tickets greeted us in English. We were dressed conservatively and hadn't said a word, yet she knew. I asked her how, and she said, "It's your shoes." Indeed, I was wearing running shoes. Extra rice in their drinks. My American girlfriend's old German teacher has a story about how a group of them were together in Germany, and in the group there was one American. There was a bowl of ice in the middle of the table for everyone to share between them, and the American guy took the bowl and dumped all of the ice in his own drink. Apparently Americans like ice more than Europeans. I hear that us Americans can easily be spotted in the airport by the fact usually we're used to taking off our shoes in TSA. Baseball caps, university spirit wear, cargo shorts, free t-shirts from events with ads and text all over them. And for the older Americans, they always seem to just kinda stand in the middle of everything looking around. Holy shit, that's such an incredibly accurate description of us in the wild. Especially the old right in the middle of a four-way or T intersection of grocery store aisles, and they somehow position themselves and cart to block all paths while staring at the ceiling trying to calculate out where muffins are. As an American, I'm told we allowed. Apparently, where my in-laws live in Brazil, they consider us relatively quiet, which is nice. Am British man. Walking along Jacksonville Beach in Florida last September. Man in bar across street, has conversation everyone can listen to. I look disapprovingly, but quickly regain my composure. I was in France once in a very famous and classy art gallery and saw a wildly overweight sweaty man with a shirt on that read something like "Vegetarians are just bad hunters" or something along those lines, with a huge picture of a dinosaur. I turned to my friend and said "That's definitely an American." Sure enough, he then called his kids over in a very southern twang, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. When they cross the street, they expect cars to stop for them. In my country, the cars will run you down without thinking twice. P/S. When I was in America, I got so used to waiting for cars to drive past before crossing the street, I stopped every time I see a car I can see. So many drivers getting upset with me because they were waiting for me to cross first. Baseball hat, oversized shirts, silly t-shirts, khaki, cargo, running shoes, shorts, bootcut jeans, white socks pulled up past your shin. You even walk differently. Wait, we walk differently? How so? Using our feet. Believe it or not, most other countries in the world use meters instead. I would say impeccable facial hair. Maybe they get a trim before they go on holiday, but I'm always impressed by their tidy beards and mustaches. I'm laughing that it took this long to find a positive response. I'm going out of the country for the first time relatively soon, and I'm doing some research. I'm planning on trimming my beard before I go. I read somewhere that the way we put our weight on one leg while standing is a sign, as well as holding a cigarette with the middle and index finger instead of the index and thumb. Was that from the XCI disguise expert? Maybe. The absolute fearlessness of asking anyone on the street about anything. Edit. I don't mean this negatively, I'm just saying I've seen Americans approach people both in my home country and abroad, starting conversations with them that I wouldn't dream of because they look shady or just plain scary. Example, I was in Newcastle and I see a bald-headed skinny man with face tattoos and a tracksuit suddenly asked, "Hey bud, dino where?" It's quite admirable. Why would people from other countries be afraid of doing this? The demon spiders. Trying to interact with strangers in public areas. That was always amusing. When I lived in Ireland, I'd be on Grafton Street, and some poor tourist would be confused as to how to get somewhere, and it'd only be me, the American expat, that offered to help them. The Irish are wonderfully friendly people, but they don't seem to care a whit about one on the street who looks lost and confused unless they know them. I would like to emphasize that this is what I, the brash American, perceive to be the case and may not have much correlation with actuality. Americans recognize other Americans in most countries because they smile at strangers on the street, not big city Americans. They avoid eye contact. Mid and small town Americans are much more neighborly to strangers. I wonder if different parts of the United States have different style tourists, and how are they different? They do. We get lots of tourists in DC, such as right now since the cherry blossoms are blooming. But even when they aren't, if you go for a run around the National Mall, you can spot the people who are here visiting versus the people who actually live here as clear as day. But I get it. Many parts of America aren't like DC or any other major city, so they are just trying to dress as comfortably as possible and carry whatever they'll think they'll need throughout the day, since they'll spend so much of it on foot, which isn't the norm for them. Just don't hog the entire goddamn sidewalk. I feel like people from more urban places in the US are probably harder to spot, since so many of us are used to walking around everywhere anyway. The way they like to say, "Oh, you call this X? We call that Y in America," or something along those lines. The only one of those that I've heard that baffles me is lemonade. Sprite is not lemonade. You can't tell me otherwise, and I think you are wrong and your life is wrong. I've seen multiple American tourists here in Canada asking their partners, "Where's the snow?" I really hope they were joking. It was summer at the time. I had an American ask me this during the 2010 Olympics. I pointed to the mountains and said we try to keep it up there where it's not bothering anyone. For more content, subscribe to Mr. Reddit.